sync. It's my first time recording something like this, so please bear with me. But today we're gonna go over the video I just made and kind of talk through my thought processes. Let's do this. We're just gonna start straight from the top.
I'm trying to make kimchi fried rice, but I'm all out of eggs.
Right, there's already a lot to go through here. Let's start with the composition. The way I think about a talking head shot is very simple. I just try to add depth and contrast. So here you see there's orangeness contrasting with the blueness of the natural light. There's the shadows here and the light on my face over here. Things are symmetrical, so it's simple. Another thing to note is if we drag this up, there's a little bit of motion here where I lean down and then the focus racks in. I think that just adds a little bit of extra dynamic. And there's some motion graphics. A rule of thumb I go by is when I'm captioning my speech, I try not to put more than 3 words at a time. Here I separated it to add a little just more things, but in a subtle way. Originally I just made it 3 words and it seemed a little bit awkward.
I'm trying to make kimchi fried.
Like, yeah, not enough dynamics. It doesn't match the tone and the rhythm of my voice, but this kind
I'm trying
of
to make kimchi fried rice,
does.
but I'm all out of eggs.
The next thing we have is jumping into the sequence. Note here that here in the audio it blends into the next clip instead of just cutting straight up from the clip. If we were to cut here, that away,
Egg.
like the eggs, transitions nicely into a nice clip. Cool. Foreground, subject in the midground, and then the lighting in the background. And I have, to make things look more cinematic, you have lighting from the back and your camera's pointed at the shadows. That's just like a thing. It's kind of the opposite of what's going on here, but this isn't meant to be that cinematic. Next shot. This shot is so ugly, but I have a rule of thumb. I have a little rule where I do sequences in rule of 3. So this part of the story is where I'm getting ready and leaving the house. I'll put on pants, I'll put on shoes, I'll grab my keys, and then I'll leave. So 1, 2, 3 kind of moves us to the next sequence. This part got cut short by a lot. Like, there's me grabbing the keys, opening the door, and then shutting the door. And these all have like cool sounds that I wanted to use, but to fit the pacing of the video, I think they weren't necessary. You just understood that this was the final step before I left, and now I'm outside. This guy is an establishing shot, and then getting to my car. There's a transition here because I got lazy and I didn't want to transition just the audio. I just decided to transition the whole thing because I didn't want the noise, background noise of being outside, but I did want the beeps in as sound effect. Yeah, so I probably would fade it more. I wanted the sound effects of me getting into the car to kind of like be a little bit jolting, to just re-engage the viewer here, but not in a not in a very like pizzazz way, but in a subtle way. A friend of mine asked if this was really just one take because they have like a perfectionist tendency. The answer is yes, this was just one take. I actually barely got out of the car for this take. I just sat down again and I started the car. Cool. It's a pretty shot. So again, filming the shadows and then a streak of light from somewhere. I think that looks cinematic. One thing to note about this sequence is the trees actually came before the car. Oh wow. Way before the car. Wow. Way before the car shot. So I filmed the trees first, but I rearranged it in this edit because I think it just makes sense to go from car to car. The viewer definitely would have figured it out by themselves, but I just made that, like, made it easier for them to do that, I assume. This shot is very cool. I don't know, just the color blocking is easy. It's an establishing shot. Lets you know I'm at Costco. I wanted a wider shot initially, but one, I didn't want to stand in the middle of a parking lot, and two, this looked really good when I filmed it, so I just moved on quickly. I think that's something that makes the process of filming a lot easier, to just be satisfied with what's decent. And this is better than decent. It's like good, in my opinion. This is just an interesting perspective. It also lets you know I have a cart and I'm going in. It's progressing the story, but like we don't linger for very long. The moment we linger here, you hear the blimp. I don't know. If you know, you know. Like there's this kind of like nervous proudness of owning a membership and scanning it to get into a Costco. There's just emotions behind that for me at least, and I wanted to place that into the video. Here's the eggs. There's a lot from this scene, so you can see 481, 481, 481. This was all one shot, so I think it's worth talking about why I cut it. Let's just watch it without any cuts first. So yeah, it takes way too long to tell the same story of, hey, I'm at the freezer, look at the eggs, grab the eggs, put them in the cart. What kind of eggs are these? This is born 3 eggs, 18 large. So the reason I chose these specific clips, that's it was kind of based on intuition, but I can break it down a little bit. I think I like the parts where there's movement. So you get to recognize a freezer or a fridge. I don't know what you call this. And then the next scene is another, it starts on the action again, the door opens, and then the camera focuses onto the eggs. And just as it does, it cuts to me grabbing the eggs. So another motion. And then we cut to placing down the camera in the cart. That's motion in the camera, which is different than the motion of the subject. It's just another type of motion that adds variety. Drink every time I say motion. It focuses onto the words, drawing the attention, making you read it. Words that appear without you adding them in editing is always cool, because I feel like that just draws people's attentions, at least for me. The camera just shakes in my cart and moves to 18 large. I thought that was kind of cool, so I kept it in. It just gives more information and details in the story, so I kept that in. So let's watch this sequence again into this cut here. The music drops abruptly, and then the noise of the Costco comes in, because I kind of wanted to switch the scene and switch the feeling of what's going on. What happened in reality was I realized there was a long line at Costco. Like an hour line is not an exaggeration. That's exciting for the story, but not for me in reality. I didn't do a great job of capturing how long the line was. Firstly, because I was frustrated about the line, and secondly, I just didn't want to film people, and that's kind of how you have to, like, you would have to showcase that, like just film a long line with people. But I don't like filming other people, especially if I can't ask for consent. So I had this one shot that I thought was decent looking, and then I filled in the blank with context through text. The cashier line was 1 hour long. Basic action in the background, I kind of just did what I said in the text, but it's kind of interesting, but not distracting, where your like focus is split between reading the text and seeing what's going on. It can just be background and still be semi-interesting. One of the things that is really important and that I've learned, and it has changed the way I look at storytelling a lot, is but-so storytelling. In the very beginning, you're introduced to what the scenario is. I'm trying to make kimchi fried rice, but I'm all out of eggs. That moves the story forward already. So without that context, I'm trying to make kimchi fried rice, and I cut straight to putting on pants and everything. People would be like, what the heck? What is going on? Maybe that makes them not want to keep watching. Maybe the curiosity gets to them, but probably not. But now they can kind of infer that I'm gonna go get eggs. So that moves the story forward, and I make sure that these scenes don't drag on because we need to get to the eggs as soon as possible. I keep what is semi-interesting, or at least what is pretty, for vibes. We get to the eggs and that part of the story is done, so we need another conflict, another but or so. So luckily for the story, the long queue for the checkout was a good but. I got eggs, but the queue was long, so I just ate a hot dog instead. I hope you see how that moves the story along. Inherently, it's not a very interesting story. If you were to just tell someone like, oh hey, the other day I wanted to cook kimchi fried rice, but I ran out of eggs, so I went to Costco and I got the eggs, but the line was really long, so I ate a hot dog instead. Inherently not that interesting of a story, and that's probably why the video is not like a viral video, but it's good to understand the beats of conflict so that you can highlight them and understand the pacing of the story. Minus the waiting in line to check out, it probably took an hour to film, edit, and upload. So it's a good example of how you can practice your storytelling muscle, your composition muscle, and your filmmaking muscles without a huge time commitment. So a 30-second video made in an hour is about a good pace. Oh, I do want to go over color grading real quick for you. I shoot in log, which is a very flat profile that shoots a lot of information but keeps it bland so that you can make the edits yourself. I'll kind of go over what I do. So firstly, the footage is corrected so that the exposure is natural. The way I like the color grade is I just want to make the footage look like what I saw in real life. So it was not this bright in real life to my eyes, so I darkened it first, and then next I have a color wheel which does the same thing as editing it in the footage, but I have it on an adjustment layer. You can change the values of the highlights, shadows, midtones. I usually use this to change the color temperature of making things warmer, cooler, more magenta, more green. I didn't need to do any of that. I had that done correctly in camera. Next is color curves. It darkens the shadows and the midtones and preserves the highlights. I only have that to a 10% mix, but it just makes a softer black that's still black. Adds contrast, and it just looks aesthetically better. I forgot where I picked it up from, but you can steal it too. I think it makes footage look a little bit more, for lack of a better word, cinematic. Custom LUT. This is a LUT that changes Sony footage into RE footage. RE is a brand of cameras that a lot of big films use. I love the color profile that it has. I just used this guy's. I bought it off his website. It's pretty good. It works as a base. I've always used it at 100%. It's good stuff. So color curves too. This is for changing the colors if I wanted to. These days I don't do this as much, but it basically allows you to change the whole exposure or each color channel. So something that I've seen that's pretty popular these days is everyone adding this like yellow tinge in the highlights and like a little bit of green in the shadows, and then really like adding contrast to the shadows and fading the highlights. Like this is a thing that you'll see from like a lot of cinematic influencers, this kind of color grading. It is very like stylistic, and I think it looks great. They'll usually add like halation and everything. I'm not gonna do that because I don't like that anymore. I want things to look pretty and realistic. That's what I'm achieving. So this is what it would look like without it, with that style, what I saw with my eyes, and this is like a stylistic way to do it. Yeah. Personal taste. That's about it. That's all I have to cover for this little video. I hope you picked up something. I hope you tell me what you picked up. If you think I do something weird or did something bad or something could be done better, I'd love to hear that too. But yeah, that's kind of it. Ask any questions you want. This was fun. I'm gonna film more of these. This is really fun actually. So yeah, I'm excited.